All right, so the last few times I recorded this took a little while for the live stream to catch up to everything. And it cut off like the first minute or so of what I was talking about. So I'm just gonna give a little bit of an introduction here and then get going. Hello and welcome to Tech Time today. I am your host, Jeff Whelpley. We're going to be talking about three topics in this episode, or this live stream, I should say, because it's not the traditional episodes that I've done in the past. I'm kind of riffing a little bit ad hoc in a couple different areas. But there's three things I want to talk about today. Talking about some new JavaScript standards and just how the standardization process has evolved for JavaScript over the past decade plus, as well as code editors. I've been trying out a couple different things, including Cursor, which a lot of people have been using and kind of promoting, and I've been seeing other developers that I know speak highly of using, Cursor as opposed to other ones. So I've been trying that out the past week, and I was going to give a little bit of my thoughts, and then with a lot of the changes that have been occurring for a little while now, but especially in the economy this past week in the United States and in the world really. But more so, just like a lot of changes with the future of work for, well, changing for everybody, I guess, but kind of focusing on software developers and what is the future for software developers. And I think I've seen a lot of different opinions out there. I've been reading a lot of different thoughts, and I kind of have a couple things I wanted to mention. So thank you for joining me today. Make sure you click subscribe if you want to see periodic live streams, see some more curated content sometimes. I do have a few conferences actually coming up. I've been sending out some different, or responding to RFPs and talking to different friends running conferences. Actually, probably won't, most of them don't get started till like the fall, but it kind of takes like 6 months ahead of time to start queuing things up. So I actually will have a pretty big, busy fall and winter conference schedule in addition to all the other stuff that I'll be working on. So I'll mention more specifics about that as they get further along. But let's dive into everything and get started with the JavaScript standard stuff. So I just a small article I ran across for the for enums becoming standardized within JavaScript. So if you're like me and use TypeScript, a lot of this stuff is like, whatever, because TypeScript already has enums. It has like a lot of these different features that JavaScript doesn't. So it kind of doesn't matter to some degree, but it's just good, I think, in general, JavaScript adapting. Like TypeScript has always been meant to be to like an enhancement on top of JavaScript and to be kind of a future forward thinking for JavaScript. And so, I mean, so many things from TypeScript have in the past and in the future will be moving to JavaScript standard, and that only helps for the advancement of the web. So definitely always great to see anything like that becomes JavaScript standard from the things that TypeScript developers are used to. So good stuff. The second thing was with code editors. So I always use Visual Studio Code, or I have been. In the past, I've used a bunch of different editors, many different ones. And Cursor is technically Visual Studio VS Code underneath the scenes with some enhancements. Um, and I mean, really, I mean, someone else tell me if this is not the case, but I'm pretty sure when you use in basic VS Code with a Copilot extension, it has most of what's there for Cursor. I mean, maybe there's some stuff like I didn't really notice, but just so essentially, if you're using VS Code with Copilot extension versus Cursor, there's like different AI models you're using, but it's a lot of the same features. And I mean, some stuff that was good, like for sure, in terms of like code prediction and whatever else, there's certain things in Cursor that I was very pleasantly surprised that it kind of understood. Like, actually, one really cool thing that Copilot wasn't doing that um, I really liked. I'm in the process of a migration project where I'm migrating from something written in kind of an older version of Angular and older JavaScript to a more modern version. And in course of this process, like some of it, I'm doing kind of like an automatic migration, automatically migrating code. But then other times, I'm kind of rewriting things. And when I'm rewriting things, I'll have the old version of the code, like in split screen, right next to each other with the new code. And I noticed when I started doing that that Cursor would pick up on what I was doing and like greatly accelerated um, what I was doing because it was sort of a pattern. Like there were differences with like I mean, this is like an Angular 1x version of something uh, versus the most recent version and TypeScript. There's so many differences in the underlying technology, and so like it would be very hard to just do an automatic conversion. But just by after I did a couple of different pieces of this, these components and these pages, the AI with Cursor definitely figured it out and like started like auto completing huge sections for me or whatever. So that was great. But the thing I don't like is some of the UI, like the specific UI for when it does an overlay. Like this is like a small thing, sort of, but it's gotten to be really annoying to the point where like I'm actually going to stop using it for a little bit because it's been frustrating me. Is that uh, it will like do an overlay where it covers up too much of what I need to see, and I feel like that's something that VS Code and using Copilot and VS Code like doesn't do as much. So I guess that's all to say that at least for me, for right, I'll probably keep on switching back and forth and trying a bunch of them, but I'm gonna kind of stick with the VS Code and Copilot, and also there's some other small things that are probably like easily solvable if I spent more time on it for like certain shortcuts that didn't get transferred over or whatever. But no, it's all good. Like all awesome advancements and all this stuff is helping make developing easier and pushing things forward and whatever else. And especially I like in both Copilot chat and the Cursor chat, the fact that it has the full context. Like without those, months ago when I was just using a separate ChatGPT or Gemini window, I had to like copy and paste code back and forth, and that was always an issue. So that stuff's all great, all good stuff. All future forward will be great, but not perfect. Like it definitely isn't doesn't do everything perfectly. And that actually is a good segue to the third and final topic I wanted to go over today, which is the future of software development. And the reason I say it's a good segue is because a lot of the general gist, what I'm saying is what I would say to start with the future of AI, where because LMs are good in some respects, but very far from perfect. You can't trust them, and they don't. They're not intelligent. You know what I mean? Like it's pattern matching, and it just without enough data, without enough training, like it does not give you the right answer. And so, as much as it does work really well in certain areas, for at least a lot of development that I do that is newer stuff. It's sort of cutting edge. It's sort of niche. Like there's not a lot of that I'm aware of open source code to train on for this stuff. It's not, the LMs don't help you as much, right? So, but that's like a short term problem to some degree. I mean, there'll always be cutting edge stuff. So like, I mean, it will be there will be an issue ongoing, even if it's what is new today will be old tomorrow or whatever. But there'll be something else new. But maybe they have a way in the future of LLMs being able to train more efficiently or be smarter about that type of stuff or whatever. But I kind of, as I was thinking through these things and reading a couple articles, like I kind of broken down into like kind of like three phases. I feel like what I think the future will be for software developers, where right now phase one is where you're having like AI kind of assist you. So you are still, for the large part, not all, but mostly writing code in the same way. Like your actual code is the final result is similar to what you would have before, but you're sort of getting enhanced by using a lot of the AI related AI powered tools to make you more efficient, to make you faster, that type of thing. And so I feel like even in this phase, we can go really far and it can get a lot better. So it's not like this is the most efficient. We're at the most, the edge of this phase. I feel like we're just in the beginning of this phase, and there's still like a lot more to go, where we can continue to build systems and write software in the same way as we've always done it to some degree, but just like faster, more efficient, with these tools that help us. So that's the kind of phase one. The phase two is where, like, and the big change between phase one and two is where you have the AI tool writing code, running code that you and other developers will never see, will never look at or in detail or whatever. You sort of it you are just a kind of a um, designer. You're using prompting to tell what you need or whatever. It kind of builds out these things, and it's a pretty big shift. Like, I mean, I know that that will happen to some degree now, but like really, it won't as much as I mean, I've seen various things out there of people thinking that this is a real thing that can be done right now. And I mean, okay, for prototyping, sure, for certain use cases, like so, there will be definitely use cases will happen, but like if um, you're going to run it, people will try to do this, but it will be fraught with issues. So it won't be the majority. It won't be the best practice, in my opinion, to do this type of thing in large scale. But what could happen for this next phase, which I think is phase two, is where you start to architect systems. So like the developer is architecting, the generative system, like that's the terminology, like a lot of them, a lot of providers are using, but it's basically having kind of a bunch of smaller autonomous pieces that work together. And so in that type of setup, I could see that you can get to a really granular level where the human is doing the architecting to make sure that it's set up in the right way, and you sort of do a really good job well defining what the inputs outputs are in these kind of like smaller areas. And because it is you're the in this phase, in my thinking, that it's all kind of small isolated pieces, it is easier to trust that the AI system is doing the right thing because you can use a lot of like it's easier to run validations and whatever else. So like you don't necessarily need to know or care about the implementation details, um, but you uh, you have it set up in a way that like even if it does get messed up, it's just like that one piece, and maybe you have checks and balances and whatever else. So in this phase, technically AI is doing more than just it's like AI there's a big switch between phase one and two. The phase two, the AI is in control of the code, like and the developer is not. So like that's going to be like it'll be gradual, like it won't be just overnight type of thing. But like in terms of the way I'm looking at it, um, that's where like the big shift happens when the best practice and majority of people are doing it that way, and the developer is focused on overall architecting systems and kind of you know how all of these pieces kind of like work together. You know, and then the third phase is when you don't even need the architect to do that thing. There's enough trust and there's enough sophistication where literally AI can do everything itself. And basically, software developers just aren't needed anymore. That you can just have a product manager slash designer or whatever, and you can just talk to it like Jarvis, and it just does everything. Right now, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that think that we're close to, or they feel like this phase three is just around the corner, is what we, or perhaps even what we already have or whatever. And maybe I'm the one being naive here, or whatever, but just from, I mean, I use a lot of these AI tools every single day. Like I'm in both as a consumer, as like an individual consumer, like using them, but then also integrated to the systems that I build. And it's hard because the like if you've ever seen the read the blog post Wait But Why, waitbutwhy.com. I love it. One of my favorite authors ever. He's I forget the name of the guy actually, but like just I've read all of his stuff, and in his article about AI and superintelligence, he talks about how humans are incapable of grasping how exponential growth works. And so I could be the one that is, I recognize that I could be the one being not thinking in the right way or not being able to grasp exponential growth in this case. That, oh yeah, this phase three where there's literally no software developers needed at all, is maybe it's closer than I think. But I just don't think so. Like I don't know. Like i- my feeling is that we're pretty far away from that. Like there's just um, it's so many technical challenges that the underlying technology, AI technology, has to be able to overcome. That getting to that point, I feel like you know maybe in our lifetimes, but I don't know, 10 plus years for sure, if I had to guess. And I think that phase one is going to be solidly where people are at for the next year or two. But I do think that phase two, it will, I mean, has already started, like to a small degree, but will become more and more popular over these next 2 years. So that is something where there will be a pretty big um, shift, in within like a few, like five, let's say within the next, even being conservative, like 5 years or whatever. So like the key thing with that is, you know, so I'm still used to writing, almost all. code myself other than like what's you know I don't know, maybe it's like 60/40, 70/30 of code that I write versus like AI stuff right now. And in 3 to 5 years, that should more be like, I don't know, 20/80, something like that. Um, and a lot more focus for developers is on architecture. And so I do think, and okay, one I should mention is um, maybe outside of UI. I feel like UI is like a whole separate thing. And maybe not, but um, it still would be along the same phases that I just said. But I feel like that just will maybe lag a little bit. They need, in other words, need still manual development to some degree, like anything user interface, in order to for companies and products that need a very or care very much about squeezing that you know, final percentage of um, perfect UI, perfect performance, perfect everything else. There's always going to be that where like if you're fine with building something that doesn't look perfect, doesn't isn't like the most is web performance, what isn't like the absolutely 100 out of 100 or whatever. Uh, if you don't care about those things, then of course, then a lot of AI generated stuff will come much sooner. But for those at the very top, at the will always require some manual, or well, not always, but like will probably for longer. So yeah, I don't know. I guess the key thing for software developers, I would say, is it's really, really important to embrace. Like, I mean, as much as you may not want to, or as much as you might be annoyed by some of the failings, some of the inadequacies of the current AI technology, and feel like you can do stuff better yourself in your own self-interest, is to stay on top of things because it will continue to get better and better. And you want to be in a position where you're the one who is constantly utilize them to the maximum degree. Like you're not the one who's doing something that is no longer relevant anymore. You know what I mean? Um, yeah, I guess that's the thing. The thing that makes me feel good, actually, to be honest, and this is maybe like a positive way to end this video, is that because I am constantly trying to use these tools as much as possible, I feel like I know very well right now. I don't know. I don't necessarily have as good of a grasp on the future because I'm not actually with. I'm not an employee of OpenAI building these things and kind of like seeing the next generation. But as a user who's using them every day and seeing where the limitations are, I know viscerally how like there's certain technical problems I'm trying to solve for my company for different open source projects that I'm working on, and I would love it if the AI tools would just do it for me, like or be able to like use them in a way that would do it for me. And often I'll try sometimes for long periods of time, longer than I probably should, because I really want to understand the limitations or understand why it's not working. And in doing that, the thing I'm trying to get to say is that it does make me feel good that I at least have a grasp of the where that line is today. I'm not saying in the future, but today, for sure, I can see where my own value is relative to this technology, and it can be feel like depressing when you don't know where that line is, like when you are not sure of whether what your skills are, what you can do is going to be worth anything in the future. it's very weird time to be alive, actually. Like there's this sort of dichotomy between, these amazing new technologies coming out and our reflection as a society and as individuals of like how to grow and move forward, like because everybody wants to work and have a focus and have a purpose, right? And now I'm getting like all I'm getting all philosophical here, um, but as a software developer, like you feel like, or I felt, I should say, I don't want to claim to speak for everyone, but like I feel like I have a purpose. Um, working on the projects, like trying to achieve those objectives, but then also like on an individual basis, that like I'm the one who can write the code, who can implement technically these things. And yes, like even though now, right today, like I said, I feel good about that in particular. I still am not sure, just like everybody else. Like, okay, and am I wrong? In a year from now, are we going to be at that phase three where literally no developers are needed at all anymore? I think even in that case, I would still be fine because I'm comfortable kind of switching gears to just be more in that kind of product manager, designer type role. But it's still unsettling. Definitely unsettling. It definitely like I think that the hardest thing is, even though you feel good about knowing that today things are still fine, it makes it hard to plan. It makes it hard to like strategize about your, let's say, even next year. Like what am I going to be doing over the course of this next year? I, I don't know. I mean, I've got, with the projects I'm working on, I know some kind of like stuff over the course of the next month that I got to work on, but in terms of how things are going to evolve and whatever else, and what I know could potentially be possible, both in terms of um, technologies available to enable certain things, and then the sort of end result of forces, with how like business and finance has changed. Like I don't know. It is unsettling time, unsettling and exciting. I just hope that at some point there'll be some sort of clarity, I guess, or like some sort of. And I think this is something that like not just I, but a lot of people need. Is most people, if they had, okay, for the next 10 years, this is probably how things are going to roll out. Then they'd be like, okay, no matter what it is, even if it's like drastically different than what it's been, I think most people would adapt to it, be able to like focus and then just go. But not having that right now with so much uncertainty, is tough. So we gotta basically do stuff day to day. And I guess I said I was gonna end it like on a positive note, but now I'm not, and I'm not so sure. Anyways, uh, my if I had to summarize again what it was, is that I feel like the I'm on top of things in the current state of these AI technologies for software developers is mostly a good thing, assistive, helps us, and we are going to have to evolve, as we move closer to being able to, this is phase two of where AI drives stuff more and we're more just like the architects. Um, but I'm not sure. I guess that's one thing that I'm going to try to, maybe as my own focus, to try to help other developers, is to get to know a lot more intricate details for a lot of these providers, like within Google, within OpenAI. And I think if I get a little bit closer to the people that are developing these enabling AI technologies, maybe I'll have a better sense of that, and I can start to help other people ahead of the curve. So we'll see. But hopefully you find this helpful. I did riff for a little bit and went for way longer than I thought I would. But thanks for joining me, and I will see you again on the next live stream. Hope you have a great weekend. Actually, it's Friday here in Boston, so enjoy the weekend, and I will see you all soon.